Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Welcome back to another episode of Resilient Minds 365. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Well, guys, we have a special guest with us. Today we will be talking about eating disorders. And this is a topic that is new to me, and I'm really excited about it because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what eating disorders are and whether they are mental illnesses or not. So I'm going to introduce you to our guest. Her name is Allie Duff. Who is Allie Duff? Well, Allie Duff is the founder, CEO, and a fashion designer who believes that everyone has a right to live with pure confidence and deserves to feel strong, supported, and free to be themselves. As a Division I athlete, swimming was Allie's life. When her career came to a close, Allie was confronted with the toll of her neglecting mental and physical health, leading her to be admitted for treatment in 2018. As she started her journey to find balance, Allie struggled to find effortless pieces that were living it soft, and made her feel better, feel herself, leading her to create Pure Balanxed. With that said, I now introduce you to Allie Duff. Allie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to move this over here. All right. So, Allie, tell us a little bit more about your profession. How did you get started? Why did you start it? Yeah, just break it down.
Yeah, totally. So as you kind of mentioned, started the business kind of fresh out of my treatment for my eating disorder. I was going through the process of obviously going through a lot of mental health and changes and physical changes. And through that process was kind of learning what I wanted to really do with my life and what I didn't want to do. And had a real trouble trying to find clothing that not only made me feel like comfortable, but also confident. And that kind of sparked the idea to create a clothing brand. But when I first created it, it was very like just basic t-shirts, and I had this idea to have affirmations hidden in the clothes somewhere, because I found that affirmations were really powerful for me through treatment and just on an everyday basis, basically. And that kind of created the journey of starting Pure Balanxed. It started with these, like, as I said, basic t-shirts with a logo on them. And then I created something called affirmation tags, which we still use to this date, which is really unique to us. And they're just sewn onto each of our pieces. And when you flip it over, there's an affirmation that's created just for you. So it's hidden from the outside world, but you know it's there and it's right at your fingertips. That's how I kind of started the business. I don't have a background in fashion design or business. I actually went to school for exercise science and was really heavy into sports, being a swimmer. And then kind of just realized that I didn't want to go down that path, and just started with a clothing brand. And then from there, it's just kind of snowballed. Yeah.
Amazing. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Kind of funny how life would just take you in a different direction.
Yeah, I know, it is wild, eh?
Yeah, definitely. I am a testament to that. I understand when life takes you in a different direction. When you study something and it's not where you end up. You end up in a totally different direction. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So As we know, your mental health diagnosis would be eating disorders.
Yes.
Did you live with any other disorders as well?
Yeah. So generalized anxiety, clinical depression, and then traits of borderline uh, personality disorder. But I would say they're all pretty much like combined. A lot of people who have eating disorders also have like a coexisting mental illness as well, which is something that I learned about through treatment. Um, but yeah, so quite a few mental illnesses that I still deal with on a daily basis, but are in a different spot today than I was in the past.
Okay. And when were you diagnosed?
Um, yeah, I was trying to remember the exact time. I think like official diagnosis was probably around 2016 and then more clarity in 2018.
Mhm.
But I would definitely say I struggled way before that. I just didn't really know what was going on.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So maybe you can walk us through it. Tell us a bit more about your mental health story of resilience. What did you go through and how did you bounce back, bounce forward, come to this
Yeah,
place?
so oh sorry.
No worries, go on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say it really started to begin when I stopped swimming. So I swam competitively for like 12 years of my life from age 9 to 21. And that was my identity. Like I was a swimmer. It was just like I was very structured. I had this routine for so long. And then when I retired from swimming, I kind of hit this point where I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my identity was, and kind of I would say really started to fall into a deeper depression then. I would say I struggled with depression like for many years, but um this is when I feel like it really started to like take a deep dive. And then it just kind of like snowballed into my eating disorder just kind of like took off, and for a couple of years there it was just kind of in and out of treatments like therapy, and it just started to get worse and worse. I also didn't have like the biggest understanding of eating disorders either, and neither did my family, neither did a lot of my friends. So that was really tricky because even my family doctor, it was just like, okay, go do this. Like there wasn't really a lot of support. I went into an outpatient clinic local to me, but it was very, I would say relaxed, not very structured, not very strict. So I didn't really want to be there or didn't really want to receive treatment at that time. So it was kind of just like, I would just kind of like go with the flow and not really follow any of the rules, I should say, because there was no one really making me do anything. So from there, I got put onto a wait list to get into a more intensive treatment, which was like 3 hours away, and the wait list was 10 months. Um, so this was covered through OHIP in Ontario. Um, so yeah, so it was a long time to wait, which is really unfortunate for eating disorders treatment and support, especially in Ontario, I would say in Canada, it's very limited. The amount of therapists are very limited because it is such a complex illness. There does need to be a lot of skills when it comes to treating them, and there's not enough, I would say, knowledge in the past. Like I'm hoping that things will change in the future, but yeah, so I just had to kind of like hold on for those 10 months. I would say that was the hardest part. Um, I would say, and my depression was getting a lot worse. It was kind of just surviving the days, not really living. And I'd given myself kind of like one last chance. I was like, okay, I'll try this treatment out. If it works, then like, okay. But if not, like, it was kind of just like, this was my end all. Like I was just very, very depressed. So I went to the treatment. This, I think it was end of May 2018. It was by far the hardest thing I've ever done, and probably will be the hardest thing I've ever done. And from there, it's just been, yeah, really working on my mental health. I continually still do therapy now, even though it's been like 4 years. But kind of the life after treatment was really hard, like the year or 2 years after, and then through the pandemic. But I definitely am in a better spot today. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. I feel like I just rambled for you.
Yeah, no, that answered everything. So
Perfect.
one thing I have to commend you that you were able to wait the 10 months. That must have been grueling for you. 'Cause
Yeah, it was.
go on.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate that that's the case. The only way I could have gotten into treatment faster was if I had gone to like a private facility, which was about 30,000 a month, and there was no way I could afford that. The only way that you can go is if you have really good insurance or like you can afford it, but like I couldn't afford that. So
Yeah.
I was still kind of like getting support through the outpatient clinic local. I mean, they were pretty much just like keeping me going until I was able to get in. And yeah, but that time is really detrimental to a lot of people. And I don't even know what the wait times are like now because of the pandemic and the rise in people needing support. But yeah, it's definitely a really major problem when it comes to treatment for eating disorders.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being a major setback, for
Mhm.
a lot of people because um, people, when you have a problem and you're looking to fix that problem, you're looking to fix it now.
Mhm.
Sometimes what could end up happening to you while you're waiting, the depression could get worse, the
Mhm.
anxiety can get worse, and it could lead to much more serious, more issues like suicide. And
Mhm.
that is why people,
Yeah.
just the fear fact that these gaps, cause
Mhm.
people to, these are reasons why suicide levels are so high. It's
Yeah.
because of the gaps and the waiting periods and having to
Mhm.
wait for services and not that feeling of helplessness. So
Mhm.
I
Exactly.
mean, I'm very thankful that you were able to wait out the period,
Mhm.
but not everyone is that lucky.
No, and the thing with eating disorders is that although it is a mental illness, it really does affect your physical health as well. So there's that component too,
Mhm.
um, that you do have problems there as well. So yeah, the wait times are, it's just, yeah, it's
It's
ridiculous.
unfortunate. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
definitely.
really, really unfortunate. So yeah, I know I'm always like, what can I do? And I don't even know. Yeah.
Well, this is one way to raise awareness that
Yeah, exactly.
this is something that just by sharing your story, letting people know that this is a problem.
Hmm.
Hopefully, some policymakers will make better changes and will provide more services for people with eating disorders as well,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it is a mental disorder, and it is, I think it's you mentioned earlier, it's comorbid, uh,
Yeah.
where it leads to other mental illnesses as well. It's attached to other ones.
Yeah. Most like it is very common for people to have multiple.
Mhm.
Yeah. And eating disorders have like the second highest um death rate for mental illness, I think, aside from addiction. Um, so
Wow.
yeah, it's definitely not like something to be taken lightly, and there does need to be some more action around it. But
Yes,
yeah.
definitely. So my next question to you is, So what did you have to do to overcome or bounce back from your low points? List all the resources. So I know that you went to therapy. You
Mhm.
went you went to that program. Tell us some more about the program, how it helped.
Yeah, so it was like a full day intensive program. I was there for I think around 3 months. So you're in therapy. I mean, you're basically doing group therapy all day. Um, so it was in a hospital. And I mean, you're being monitored the whole time. Where I went, it was also like they were feeding you and watching you eat and tracking your meals, making sure that you were eating enough while also kind of targeting like fear foods, they would say it. You also had like your own therapist through this time that you could check in with. But it was a lot of group therapy. But I kind of like describe the experience as like being like stripped naked and just feeling like you're on fire because you can't use any of those coping mechanisms that you could in the past. So
Mhm.
eating disorders are a lot to do with like coping mechanisms, and it's like you're numbing out a lot of your life basically, and like you just become like that illness, and that kind of like takes over. And when you can't do anything around that illness, you it's kind of like you're not the same person, right? Like it's kind of like if you think about addiction or alcoholism, you take away the drugs, people go through withdrawal,
Yeah.
and then they kind of like go through treatment that way. With an eating disorder, you can't take away the food because we need food to survive. So it's kind of like you lose all the coping mechanisms to, no matter, depending on what the disorder is, to learn how to eat without, or to eat, I guess, without using any of those coping mechanisms. Or but I would say like the biggest thing was like the group therapy and learning more about kind of the why behind everything was big. Yeah, I don't think I would have like survived if I didn't do this intensive treatment. I think I really needed to be on a structure, and I needed rules, and I needed someone kind of like telling me what to do and watching me. Although it was like extremely hard, and I probably have blocked a lot out of my memory, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um, for me, it was was right, and like for some people, that may not necessarily be the case. Like a lot of people can start recovery and do it through therapy or an outpatient or like on their own. Like it definitely is not one size fits all, which I think is really important when it comes to mental illness or mental health, is that what works for one person may not work for another person. Um, and I think that's an important note to remember.
Right, right, right.
Mm.
That's very good points. Very good points. So my next question to you is, what are three things you wish you had available when you were at your lowest point?
Um, I mean, the obvious one is just I wish that there was more treatment options, and I wish that the wait times weren't so long. Um, I would say like when I was at my lowest, it was really hard for my family and for friends. I kind of just, I mean, blocked out most of my friends anyway. So I do wish that there was more kind of understanding about eating disorders in general, for people to understand like what it is. Like I didn't even have any knowledge about eating disorders until like I was going through it. Um, if you think back, like even when we were in school or even high school or anything like that, you just kind of learn like the definitions of like two disorders and that's it. Like you
Mhm.
don't, there's very much like a look for an eating disorder, which is not correct. Like it's a black and white kind of thing where there's so much that happens in like the gray zone. which is where a lot of the stigma happens. I do feel like things are starting to get better, but I think there's still a long way to go. Um, the third thing, yeah, I don't know, I would just say like more access to treatment and more access to therapists. Like there was only like one or two therapists in where I live that specialized in eating disorders. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's not, you won't find a lot of eating disorders through like the programs that are offered through OHIP or like the pay what you can kind of therapy programs. Most of those are just kind of like generalized. So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you very much. Um, so my next question is, so what words of hope can you give to our listeners? What would you tell them? Actually, before you answer that question, um, an eating disorder, you said it's it doesn't look the same for every person.
Mhm. Yeah.
What did an eating disorder look for you? What did, like, were you bulimic? Like what happened? Like what
Mhm.
were some of the activities that you did um when you were, I guess, ill?
Yeah. So I was anorexic, but I also went through like anorexia and atypical anorexia, which the difference is only your weight. So you could weigh X amount and be considered anorexic, or you could be like 2 pounds heavier and be considered atypical anorexia, which is still the same illnesses, I think. And I also think that there's a lot of stigma around that. But I would say if someone saw me on the street, they wouldn't have known that I had an eating disorder. I think that there's either the taboo or the stigma is that you're extremely underweight, like you're hooked up to a feeding tube, or you're extremely overweight. And then everyone in between is like the gray zone, and that's not considered. I think that's what we learned in school as well. Um, so, I mean, I struggled with a lot of things like over exercising, restricting, like self harm, like a lot of things like that.
Mhm.
And a lot of things like that can be hidden, right? Like no one's going to see you doing any of that. It's kind of like depression and anxiety. No one sees it, it's invisible, but it's like you experience it. Um, but yeah, definitely for eating disorders, it also doesn't matter your age. Like I went to treatment with people who were like 18 and 60. Like it doesn't discriminate on your age or your gender. And I think that also is where the stigma happens, is that we have this kind of like stereotypical like look for an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the area that I think people are trying to really break down. But I mean, it's going to take a lot of work because it's been years in the making, basically.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And what words of hope would you offer to our listeners? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would definitely say like if someone is struggling with their mental health or a mental illness, um, to remember that you're not your illness. I think we put a lot of like identity on ourselves, like we're someone that has depression or we're someone that has anxiety, and then we kind of feel like that's our identity. But like you can have those illnesses and still have like a successful, happy life. It's just something that you deal with. Um, and I also would say to take it one day at a time. I think when you are struggling with your mental health or any mental illness, it does feel really overwhelming. You kind of look at the future and feel everything feels like very like dooming. But I would definitely say that taking things one day at a time is going to be really helpful for you. And if you're thinking about doing any treatment or any kind of recovery, or no matter what it is, that 100% is worth it. Like I never thought I would be in recovery. I just thought that wasn't for me. Like I just figured like I would be sick forever and just deal with it and that would be my life. But I'm really happy that I am like in a different stage in my life right now than I was. I'm not going to say it's an easy process, but it's definitely worth it. That's for sure.
Awesome, awesome, wonderful. Not an easy process, but it's definitely worth it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So now we're going to take a switch on the interview. As you can see behind me, there's a book and it says The Music of My Life. So basically the book is about bipolar and music therapy. So I would like to know, what type of music do you like?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I feel like a mixture of music. I'm not like a one kind of person, but I do love kind of, I don't know the right like term. I don't know if it's like indie or kind of like indie pop maybe. I don't know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So if you were to think of a song that best describes your journey, what would it be and why?
That's tricky. I did listen to the song a lot, like when I was going through treatment. It's called Scars to Your Beautiful by I think it's Alicia or Alyssa Cara. I'm probably botching her name, to be honest. But I think like it's a lot to do with kind of like body image and things like that, which I did relate to. I would say when I was going through my journey, I would listen to kind of like what I would call like sad music, like which I found comfort in. Now, if I listen to it, it would probably be sad, but yeah, it's hard to find one song that really can kind of capture your whole journey. Yeah. Not sure.
But that song, Alyssa Cara.
Yeah, that song is a really great song.
Okay, cool. No worries. Awesome. So how can we stay in touch with you? What are your social media handles?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Allie Duff, or if you want to check out my business, it's Pure Balanxed on all socials, and the balance is spelled with an X instead of a C, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Allie, for taking part in this interview. I think this is going to be a really great episode for people to hear about, and it's going to be the 50th episode. So,
wow, congrats.
Thank you. So I'm going to be quite excited to air it, and because it's just a totally different topic, and eating disorders, people don't understand it, and they have so many different misconceptions. So thank you very much for sharing your story. And yes, with that said, to all you resilient minds out there, until next time, please subscribe to us on all our platforms, and don't forget to rate the show and leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Also, join the community of resilient minds and sign up for our monthly newsletter at CleoniCrawford.com. Be sure to grab a copy of my book, The Music of My Life, on all Amazon marketplaces to get to know me better. And if you can think of one person that can receive value from today's show or connect with Allie's testimonial, please share it with them. Feel free to take a screenshot of this week's episode of the podcast and tag us on Instagram. You can tag myself at Only Cleoni or Resilient Minds 365, and today's guest at Allie Duff. And remember, mental health is not a death sentence. Despite your illness, you can strive, thrive, and live a life of abundance. Until next time, I'm Cleoni Crawford, and I'm signing off.
you.